I remember sitting in the crowd at the SeaWorld show when I was younger, astonished by the animals that I saw and the tricks that they were able to perform. What I didn't know is that I was paying for this corporation to continue its abuse that it inflicted on sea life. In the last couple of years, I have watched various documentaries and read many news stories about the harmful living situations that these animals are in. Informing yourself on the mistreatment of these animals will hopefully allow for them to live freely in the future, seeing as though they don't even have the physiological needs to survive as it is. In this speech, I will be talking about why animal captivity is wrong. Animal captivity should be banned because corporations abuse animals caused by taking them out of their natural habitats, so instead they should be moved to animal rehabilitation centers or animal sanctuaries. The first thing that should be addressed is the abuse and neglect that these animals endure. SeaWorld trains their orcas to do tricks and entertain their audience, but not a lot of people know the tactics used to get these animals to perform. A University Wire author wrote a news article for the Spartan Daily newspaper in February 2019 titled, "Is it ethical to keep animals in captivity?" Talking about an orca kept in captivity at SeaWorld, they pointed out that park footage and audits revealed that trainers would often starve orcas into performing certain tricks and stunts. This training technique can lead to very scary outbursts from the whales, leading a lot of people to think that they're dangerous when really they usually keep to themselves. If an animal forgets their routine, then they have their basic needs to live taken away. And from a human's perspective, this is very hard to imagine, but one could only see how frustrating and confusing it may be. Don Vaughn, a reporter for North Carolina State Government and Politics, wrote an article called "See Blackfish and Never See SeaWorld the Same" in July 2013 for the Herald Sun. She writes about a movie called Blackfish, which covers the animal cruelty that goes on behind the scenes at SeaWorld, especially for an orca named Tilikum. He was captured from the wild as a 2-year-old and sent to a Canadian orca show that kept him in a small tank overnight, where he was attacked by other orcas. Places like this use shock value for profit, but tend to neglect the actual needs of these animals. They are usually more focused on breeding them to make sure that they can make more revenue. Orcas in captivity tend to have a lifespan 50% less of those that are in the wild, and this exact same thing occurred for Tilikum. At the end of his show career, he had a collapsed dorsal fin, meaning that he endured very high stress and countless injuries. He was beat up by other whales, forced to breed with other orcas, and he was confined to his own space. SeaWorld isn't the only perpetrator of these actions, though, as regular zoos also participate. Jane Dalton, a writer for The Independent, interviewed Nina Jackal, a nonprofit organization owner to end animal abuse, in December 2021. Nina investigated a local zoo where she found several big cats chained up or used as photo props, and animals appeared to have deformities or be ill. Animals that are forced into living like this will never know again what it's like to just be an animal because they are constantly neglected and punished. These animals were born to live in the wild and explore their habitats, not be underfed and kept to a very confined space. Lions and tigers usually have miles and miles to roam freely, but instead are confined to a 20 by 20 foot box that they are forced to call home. Now that I have talked about the abuse that occurs when animals are in captivity, I can now move on to its cause. Animals all over the world are taken from their homes and moved to zoos so they can be put on display. They are taken with no intent of being released, nor would they be able to survive if they were released. Animals tend to forget how to defend themselves when they aren't in the wild, so when they are released, they will usually die off quickly. Jane Barrentos, a writer for University Wire, published information from Liberation BC, a nonprofit activist organization, to Colorado State's newspaper, the Rocky Mountain Collegian, titled "Life Behind Bars" in May 2015. They mention a statistic about how tigers and lions have around 18,000 times less space than those that live in the wild, and polar bears have around 1 million times less space, leading them to spend a fourth of their day pacing or swimming in a small habitat and increasing their stress. This confined space can harm an animal's mental and physical health, leading them to live an unfulfilled life in captivity. Animals are worth a lot of money, especially endangered. Sometimes they are captured as trophies, but a lot of times they are captured because a corporation knows that if they can house an endangered species, that their profits will grow. Amanda Hodge, a Southeast Asia correspondent for the Australian magazine, published an article in March 2022 about animal captivity. She states that the illegal wildlife trade is the world's 4th largest contraband market, and a good deal of it comes from Southeast Asia, where animal smuggling is worth an estimated $2.5 billion. Illegal animals are extremely profitable, but the people who capture them tend to neglect the long-term effects that it will have on these animals. There is no cage or housing that is big enough to replicate what is needed for these wildlife to be able to live like the animals that they are. In April 2022, Carly Nail, an author for the Hawkeye, a newspaper for the University of Louisiana Monroe, wrote an article about animal mistreatment in zoos. She writes about how zoo habitats are not sufficient enough for big wildlife animals, and that even though zoos try to mimic the animals' natural habitats, sometimes it is not fully possible. Because of this, animals can become stressed or they can even develop mental illness. Usually these animals have miles to roam freely, but when they are captured or confined, no amount of space could feel like home. Now that you have been informed on the cause and reasoning for animal captivity, I can talk about ways to prevent harm. Across the world, there are animal rehabilitation centers that are working every day to improve the lives of animals. The difference between these and zoos is that animals are only taken when they are considered endangered, and when they are taken, they are bred in a way that is humane, with the ultimate goal of trying to restore their population so that they can no longer be considered endangered. Peter Murray is a Kenyan journalist who wrote an article in March 2022 for the Guardian newspaper about the release of an endangered species called the bongo. It's a type of mountain deer into a Kenyan sanctuary. The plan is to have 10 mountain bongos be released into the sanctuary in groups of 5 every 6 months. It's estimated that by 2025 there will be 50 to 70 rewilded mountain bongos. This allows for the bongo to be rehabilitated and repopulated with the ultimate goal of them being released back into their homes. Hitting even closer to home, there are even animal sanctuaries in Missouri that help species like birds, turtles, or even alligators. Catherine Kokel, a writer for the Palm Beach Post, created an article in March 2022 for the Orlando Centennial about an animal sanctuary created in Missouri. This center helped 6,000 animals receive medical treatment in 2021, allowing them to be released back into the wild with greatly improved health. These sanctuaries allow for animals to regain health and practice safe and ethical breeding, unlike zoos who put their animals on show for profit. There are simple ways that you can help these centers, such as donating or volunteering, because they need all the help that they can get to make sure that these animals are being treated with the best care and with the best intentions. Now that I have touched on humane ways to help these animals, it's your turn to put it into action. Since the 1700s, when zoos were first opened to the public, they have done more harm than good to the animals living there. We are often tricked into thinking that these animals are happy and that they are living good lives, but that is just the start of how deceiving these money-hungry companies can be. Animal captivity, such as zoos or ocean life parks, have consistently been reported for animal abuse and neglect, caused by taking these animals out of their natural habitats. The most humane solution for this is to support animal sanctuaries and animal rehabilitation centers that will carefully look after these animals. You should not feel guilt for having attended these places, as I have also attended them in the past, but it's very hard to pick up on the fact that these animals are suffering. There is no need to dwell on what you have done in the past, as it is much more important to focus on what we can all do to be better educated on how to protect the vast species that cover this world. Thanks.